Ah, man, I'm telling you. Hey, if you're new here, you never been here, here's a message that I give to everybody. I don't care what you're going through in life. I don't care how rough it is. I don't care how tough it may be. Never give up. Because if you stay focused and you stay down, the creator of the universe, whatever name you choose to call him, gonna meet you right where you at and help you make some sense out of what's going on. Here's another message for those that's never been here. It says, manifest the life that you want. Manifestation is a real thing, and you're looking at a person who actually did it. Manifest it. It means you gotta believe it enough in here and see it in your third eye, which is your pineal gland, which is the eye of God who sees all and knows all. That's why God knows everything about you. Manifest it. See it in your third eye and bring it into fruition. Manifestation is a real thing. And to those that's new, check it out. Why don't you come on and join the family? Why don't you just
like, share, subscribe,
hit that notification bell, stay in charge, stay in connection with us. Cause we always dropping something hot, man. Hey, hit our website. The link is in the description below. Maybe you just want to show some love. If you want to show some love, we put the Cash App there just for you to do that. And without further ado, I want to get right to it. Listen, I want to say this right off gate. If you're a person if you're very sensitive and you don't like a person, if you don't like a man that's got a manly tone voice, you're on the wrong channel. Cause I'm a man and I have a strong voice, okay? So I don't know how to sound soft like people, and I don't try to do that. I just try to be me. But I don't want to be insensitive to people. Listen to me, because the message is the important thing, okay? So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Hey, I got my own website. I got my own things going. You know, you can go on my website and you can see the stuff that I got. But I'm not trying to make what I'm up here speaking about and teaching about. I don't want to make that where you got to pay for that. See, because the messages that I'm getting make me think that I need to make this little membership thing that they talking about. And they done sent me the thing. They say, hey, you can go ahead and start a membership. But to start a membership where only people can hear would have to be members, I would have to charge them. And I want you to see where my heart is truly at. I'm not trying to charge you anything for the truth. I want you to have the truth. Because that's what the Creator put it here for. Okay? So if you're a sensitive person and you don't like a man to talk manly, or if I express too much masculinity in my tone and my voice, then you're on the wrong channel. And that's the nicest way I can say it. But with that being said, let's get right to this. And I want to start with this question. And this question is to my people. And I wrote it down. Just want to make sure I say it right. So listen. If you love God the way that you say you do, and you love truth, then why has your heart changed since you found out it's an Egyptian book? Excuse me, a black Egyptian book. If you love God the way that you say you do, and you love truth, then why has your heart changed since you found out it's an Egyptian book? Excuse me, I mean a black Egyptian book. Because the Egyptians, the original Egyptians, were and is black. They are black. Why have your heart changed? That's a question. I'll let you think about that while I get my drink ready. I have me some good old ice water tonight. I already have my cup of Joe. All right, so why have your heart changed? And I think people's heart has changed because our people practice self-hating. They don't even know it. It's innate. It's innate inside of them. Because this is what I'm trying to explain to you. When you read the Bible, right, and you come to this truth, right, you begin to find out the chosen people in the Bible were the Egyptians. The Egyptians were black. Not only were they Egyptians, let's say the truth, they were Africans. They were the chosen people of God. The sacred writings were the hieroglyphics. They came from African people, Egyptians. Now, if you study in depth, real detail, then you'll find out the people that they made, these chosen people, which was Hyksos, Caucasians, Neanderthals, troglodytes, Caucasoid, white people, whatever. These people were considered unclean, Gentiles, foreigners, outcasts. They didn't have nothing to do with this, but they made those the chosen people. And they began to use something called parallelism, and they changed all of the stories in depth, in detail. And they did it spitefully, deceptively. And they changed these stories. Because once you start to follow these people, you find out these people were foreigners. They was outcasts. They was Caucasoids. They was Hyksos. They were ran up out of there. And you can follow their whole story all the way through the Bible. Now, your folks, your Egyptians, your African folks were the chosen people. Every story in the Bible, those stories were your people. They are your people. So now that you know that these stories was written for and by your people, how was it? What was the saying that the clothing line back in the day? FUBU, for us, by us. Now that you know that the original scriptures, the sacred writings, the hieroglyphs, which they changed, was for us and by us, why have your heart changed? Your heart changed because you practice self-hatred. And here's another question. Well, I got a question, but I'm going to wait. I want to get right into what we're talking about today. And I want you to pay attention. We're at 7 minutes. Listen what it says.
Listen.
The Neanderthal, the troglodyte, the Caucasian, the Hyksos imposter that translated your Bible used parallelism in a deceptive, cunning way. I already said this. They did this by applying Greek letters to the Demotic script. And this comes from the thing called the Rosetta Stone. Creating an alphabet and learning the original stories, they outright changed and interjected themselves directly into history, mistranslating the primary meanings and stealing the truths that belong to the Egyptians, or should I say, the African people, or should I say, the black people, or should I say, the colored people, or should I say, you get it, brown people, because Africans come in so many colors. So in your Bible, they speak of a chosen people. Now, this was all fabricated BS that they made up. Listen. In your Bible, they speak of a chosen people. Well, the original chosen people were and are and still is.
Listen.
The Africans. So they came up with something called the curse of Ham. No, we ain't talking about pork chops, chitlins, bacon, hog maws. We ain't talking about none of that. We talking about Ham. Listen. They came up with something called the curse of Ham, which cursed all Africans. And when you look up Ham, you'll find out the Egyptians fall under that. And when you go read your Bible, you'll find out all those people in whatever they call the land of Canaan were Africans. I'm going to show you something. Pay attention. Listen. So they came up with something called the curse of Ham, which cursed all Africans. The original stories had all other nations. Listen, the original stories had all the other nations who did not know the way of the Creator or the sacred writings. And when I say sacred writings, I'm talking about the hieroglyphs. And I'm sure we had another name for it, but that's what they translated it to. It's just mean higher writings because it was higher on that Rosetta Stone.
Listen.
The original stories had all the other nations who did not know the way of the Creator or the sacred writings, which are the hieroglyphs, as unclean, foreigners, Gentiles, Hyksos. So everybody who did not know, listen, the way of the Creator or the hieroglyphs, because majority, if they were from ancient Egypt or they lived in Africa, they knew of the hieroglyphs because that's how they were talking amongst each other. That's how they were communicating. And if you didn't know that, you were considered unclean. You was considered a foreigner. You were considered a Gentile. You was considered a Hyksos. Listen. So in their retranslations, talking about these Neanderthal, these Caucasoids, these Hyksos, these troglodytes, these white people. So when they retranslated, in their retranslations, they made the African nations, which were and are and still is until this very day, the chosen people of the Creator of this universe. They made those black people the enemies of God. Listen, they stole African folks' history and they made the real chosen African Egyptian descendants slaves. The Greeks, which were Caucasoids, the Romans, which were Caucasoids, all of these pale nations were considered Hyksos, unclean, Gentiles, because none of them knew or had knowledge of the sacred writings. They didn't even understand the dietary law that we came up with. That's why these people are carnivorous eaters of meat and they love blood and all unclean animals. It's another story. Listen, these pale nations were considered Hyksos, unclean Gentiles, because none of them knew or had knowledge of the sacred writings, which are the hieroglyphics or the hieroglyphs. And all the other nations who were not Caucasoids were mixed nations of Caucasoid and Asian, specifically Mongolian tribes / Russian / Europe, and they were considered nomadic tribes. I want to read that again. Listen. The Greeks, which were Caucasoids, the Romans, which were Caucasoids, all of these pale nations were considered Hyksos, unclean, Gentiles, foreigners, because none of them knew or had knowledge of the sacred writings, which are the hieroglyphs. And all the other nations who were not called Caucasoids or Caucasians were mixed nations of Caucasians and Asians, specifically Mongolian tribes / Russian / Europe, and they were considered nomadic tribes. Well, for those that don't know, a nomad is a person or group that moves from place to place, lacking a permanent home, traditionally seeking pasture for livestock or resources. The New World Webster says a nomad. In Latin, it's nomus. In the beginning, nomadus in Greek, originally roaming about for pasture, a member of a tribe or people having no permanent home, but moving about constantly in search of food and pasture, etc. Any wanderer who has no fixed home. Now, with that being said, let's take a closer look at this Abram / Abraham / in the Bible or in the book of Jasher, aka Rakayam. All right. And with that being said, I take you to Genesis. Listen, Genesis 12, verse 1. And God told Abraham to get thee out of the country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house. That's Genesis 12, verse 1. God tells Abraham to get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house. Well, according to Genesis, right? Genesis 11, verse 28. It says this, and Haran, which is Abraham's brother, died before his father. And when it says died before his father, all you got to do is go read in the book of Jasher. When it says he died before his father, it don't mean he died before his father. It means he died before his father's eyes. He watched him die. According to the book of Jasher, Nimrod killed him by throwing him in a fiery furnace with his brother Abram. And that's why he died before his father, meaning he died before his father's eyes. And then you can say he died before his father died too in that way. But I want to give you some understanding. Listen. And this is Genesis 11, verse 28. And Haran died before his father, Terah, in the land of his nativity. Nativity means his native land or the land he was born in. And then it says, in Ur of the Chaldees. So when you go back to Genesis 12 and verse 1, God tells Abraham or Abram to get out of thy country. Well, his country is called Ur of the Chaldees. Now, if you don't know Ur of the Chaldees is modern day Iraq today. Ur of the Chaldees is modern day Iraq today. Okay? So Ur of the Chaldees is Abram's land of nativity or native land where he was born, which is modern day Iraq. I just said that. Now, you drop down to Genesis 12, verse 4. Listen. So Abram, departed as the Most High had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So it ain't never tell you that it never told you he departed out of Iraq or Ur. It never told you he departed out of that. It just say he departed out of where? Haran. That's Genesis 12, verse 4. So Abram departed as the Most High had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So he was 75 years old when he left. Now, hold on now. Genesis 12:1 said the Most High told him to get out of his country. The country he was born was Ur of the Chaldees, which is Iraq. All right? Okay? You go to Genesis 11 and 28, and it tells you Ur of the Chaldees is the land of Abraham and their nativity. Right? Then you go to Genesis 12th chapter and verse 4, it says, so Abram departed as the Most High had spoken unto him. He was 75 when he left. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. When you look up Haran, listen, Haran in the Bible also spelled like Charran, Quran. Listen, Charran, Quran or Charan, Haran. So I'm thinking it's spelled Quran. Listen, Haran in the Bible also spelled like Quran is an ancient city in northern Mesopotamia, located in modern-day southern eastern Turkey near the Syrian border. So listen now, Abraham is bouncing from Iraq, right? The Ur, land of the Chaldees. He done bounced from there. He done bounced from Haran, which is Turkey, Mesopotamia, near the southern east Turkey, near the Syrian border. Wow. Listen. There's another question just to answer somebody. It says Genesis 12, verse 5. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth into the land of Canaan. So you went from Iraq to Haran. You went from Iraq to Mesopotamia, Turkey, northeastern Turkey, to the Syrian border, to Canaan. Now, I want you to understand something. When they say Canaan, it just means Africa. And we're going to get into that. And we're going to be specific. We're going to say Egypt. Listen, that's Genesis 12, verse 5. Listen. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered. Now, when it says all the substance that they had gathered in the land of Haran, when you get to the book of Jasher, the 14th chapter specifically, you'll find out they was in Egypt when he got these souls. This is mistranslated purposely to misguide you, mislead you, or deceive you. Listen, this is Genesis 12, verse 5. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered. and the souls they had gotten in Haran. Okay? When they got to Egypt, they didn't have anything, according to the story. Rakayim. That's in Genesis. That's Jasher, the book of Jasher, the 14th chapter. Okay? You can read up on that. And they went forth into the land of Canaan, or Canaan. And in the land of Canaan, they came. That's Genesis 12th chapter, verse 5. So they left from Ur the Chaldees. They ended up in Haran, which they left Iraq. They ended up in Mesopotamia, which is southeastern Turkey at the border of Syria. And then they ended up in Canaan. When you say Canaan, it means Egypt. Now I'm going to put that on the screen. Look at it. I'm putting it on the screen. Look, so you can see that when it said Canaan, it meant Egypt. See, all of that at one time, the ancient Egyptians ruled all of that. Egypt was the place to be, man. Egypt was the place to go see in those times. Okay? Why do you think every time it was a famine, everybody always just happened to end up in Egypt? Because Egypt was the land flowing with milk and honey. Milk and honey means food. Everybody had to go there. So, Genesis 12 and verse 5. They went from Iraq to modern day, Iraq to what you call Mesopotamia, southeastern Turkey, at the border of Syria, and then they ended up in Egypt. Now, I'm showing you all these places that Abram is going because Abram is what you call a nomad. A nomad did not have any certain place to be. And they was looking for pasture for their flocks, which would explain the sheep and the goats. And, man, I'm trying to bring you something deep here, brothers.
Listen.
I want you to see that when they said the land of Canaan, look at the screen again. When they said the land of Canaan, it meant Egypt. And I put a line under it so you can see it clear. When it says Canaan, the land of Canaan meant Egypt. All right? Now, like I said, in Jasher, the 14th chapter, in the book of Jasher, the 14th chapter, in the 15th verse, it explains how Abram got his fortune. Remember, I told you these people use parallelism. All right? Now, all you got to do is go back to Genesis 12, verse 4. Not Genesis 12, verse 4. Genesis 12, verse 5. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And the souls that they had gotten in Haran. All their substances, mean their riches and what they got obtained. And they went forth into the land of Canaan, which is Egypt. And in the land of Canaan, they came. So they went from Iraq to Mesopotamia, which is modern day Turkey, southeastern, the border of Syria, and they ended up in the land of Egypt. Now, if you go to the book of Jasher, which I'm going to do that because I want people to know. You go to Jasher. You go to the book of Jasher, 14, Jasher the 14th chapter. And I'm reading out of the Sefer, Jasher the 14th chapter and the 15th verse. And it says, and in 8 months' time, Rakayim, or Abraham, and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold, and Rakayim took a great quantity of horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses, and they remained with him. Now, you remember I told you these people are deceptively using something called parallelism. They're outright hiding the true story or just straight up lying. Now, this is how we know Rakayim is Abraham, because right after the 14th chapter, right, the next chapter, the 15th chapter, this is what it says. And in that year, there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. Second verse, and Abram, and all belonging to him rose and went down to Mitzrayim, which is Egypt. This is how we know these stories. Like I said, the Most High, and that's that's Jasher the 15th chapter. After you finish reading about Raikayam in the 14th chapter, it goes right into the story of Abraham in the 15th chapter. Raikayam and Abraham is the same person. Come over here and get your third eye open, man. We're going to teach you over here. Now, with that being said, I've covered all that I wanted to cover, and I asked all the questions, answered all the questions. I did answer a question, but I don't know if... No, I left that out. I'm sorry. I said I was going to answer it. And here's the question. This lady said, you said Abraham told a lie. And I did say Abraham told a lie. Okay? Now, if you go to Genesis, the 20th chapter, and verse 4, you hear me? Genesis, the 20th chapter, verse 4. There was a man named Abimelech. And Abimelech was a king, okay? Then when you break down Abimelech, you'll find out that Abimelech was a king. Abimelech was a king he was from Shechem. Shechem represented Canaan. Canaan is from Africa. So Abraham lied to an African king named Abimelech, which, according to the story, caused the anger of God to fall upon that king. And Abimelech asked the Most High, he said, will you destroy a righteous nation? Go and read it. That's Genesis, the 20th chapter, verse 4. But let me make it make some sense. Let me take you back. Let me take you back to Genesis 12 and 13. Go to Genesis 12 and 13 and read what it says. When Abraham went into Egypt, he told his wife, he said, you're so beautiful. He said, when these Egyptians, listen now, when these Egyptians see you, they're going to try to kill me and take you from me. Tell them you my sister for my safety. He lied. I don't care how you want to try to fix it up and that was God's plan. Listen, man, he outright lied because that's another African king. So what am I saying? I'm saying, when you go and read this book, the people that retranslated this Bible, these people were deceptive. These people were snakes. These people were Neanderthals. These people were troglodytes. These people was the lowest, the base men, sons of Belial. They was at the bottom. So when these people translated this book, they started seeing all these black people having favor with the creator of the universe, and everybody's looking up to these people for these brilliant writings and these great ideas. These people wanted in on it. So what these people did is interjected themselves, using a man named Raikayam in the book of Joshua, using a man named Abraham in your Bible, and they made this Abraham connect to these so-called chosen people who got ran out of the Holy Land by Atmos one, not Moses. And they used parallelism all the way through the Bible, from Abraham, who wasn't nobody, but a nomad who don't have a place to live, searching for pasture. That's why you know about the sheep and the goats. To somebody named Jacob or Jacob, who's supposed to be 12 tribes, who's these chosen people, and all these people were Hyksos, white people. And they run that all the way down into a lineage of somebody called King David and Solomon. But you'll find out that King David, I already proved it, is Akhenaten, and Solomon is Tutankhamun, who is the real Akhenaten's son. Egyptian black people, but these people interjected David, the chosen, Solomon, the chosen, and they go all the way through the Bible with these chosen people till they get to somebody called the Son of God. And they got y'all following these white people, these Hyksos, because you think they're chosen and you think the seed of God came out of them, and not understanding that the black people that wrote the book, the Egyptians who are the chosen people, that you are the descendants of those people. We chosen. Name another people on the earth you think more chosen than us. If we're going to talk about it like that, there ain't. There ain't. So by the time you get to what you call your New Testament, you notice why it's called a New Testament? Because they're coming up with something new. The Roman Greco Church created this mess about this Jesus. Jesus never existed. But if you want deep in details, the only man that they feared was an Egyptian. And you can find that out in the teachings of Josephus. They feared an Egyptian who was black, who had 30,000 followers, and he wasn't preaching. But guess what they called him? They called him a false prophet. Right. Now, if ancient Egypt didn't own all of that was over there, I keep asking people questions. Why is it written or documented that an Egyptian prophet, they called him a false prophet, had 30,000 followers with him on the Mount of Olives on their way into Jerusalem? And I explained to you, if you go back and you read the story of Abraham and his people was the Hyksos that got ran out of there. Abraham was a Hyksos himself. Hyksos weren't nothing but nomads. These people didn't have places to stay. They was always trying to find their way, moving about. You read the story, Abraham stopped and talked to Melchizedek. Melchizedek was ruling a high priest in Jerusalem. Well, you find out the Hyksos, that's where they ended up in Jerusalem. That's where they ended up at. Yeah. That's who them people is over there right now. And you people, you discrediting your ancestors. You discrediting your ancestors and you putting them to shame because you don't know anything about African history. Be ashamed of yourself. Be ashamed of yourself. Yeah, man. Nah. The ancient Egyptians were black and they were the chosen people of God. And our forefathers that came over here, they were the descendants of those people. Ancient Egypt ruled the world. Don't let nobody tell you anything else. Everywhere you go around this world, you're going to find pyramids and you're going to find hieroglyphs or writings the same way they were in Egypt. Because the ancient Egyptians ruled the world for a long time before anybody else began to step up. Okay? So, you're sitting here arguing about a white man coming back to crack the sky. And y'all worried about if we cursed or not. You've been cursing your own people. You understand? All right, man. With that being said, I didn't want to end it on a sad note, but man, it is kind of sad when you think about it. We live in a world where we're in Babylon because all of us are mixed up and confused. We're confused because this is what the enemy has done. They have confused and mixed up everything. But like I have said, and I'll continue to say until I breathe my last breath, the creator of the universe is here. Truth is in the earth. With that being said, I will catch it.